Hi, everyone, again. So after a short break, we're back here with Lida Simak. She's our Young Learners Director of Studies, CELTA trainer, CELT-P and CELTAS as well, certified teacher, a great person to know and work with, a super active lady, a theater goer, brilliant cook. Right, yeah, always mix those two words. I'm sorry. Yeah, so Lida, welcome, and let's talk about young learners now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anya. Hello, everyone. My name is Lydia Simak. I've seen a couple of familiar names in the chat, so great to see you here. Please, you're welcome to ask me questions, to react, because I'm going to ask you a lot of questions, because the more questions you ask, the more I can cater to your needs. So let's start. We're talking about writing and speaking with kids. Of course, this is not something that we can cover in 15 minutes, but we'll try to do our best. So yeah, hello, everyone. Good to see you all. First of all, we will start with what speaking is. So writing and speaking, what are they? Can you please write one word in the chat? So what is writing? What is speaking together? Yes, thank you very much, Tori. Tori is the first today. Thank you, Denise. Productive skills, exactly. So they are skills and they are productive skills. It means that the students need to produce. What is complex about speaking in particular is that it is not only the production, it is also the reception, because unless you're having a monologue or something, you have to actually talk to someone and react to them. So that's why a lot of teachers, they're not sure, they need help with teaching, writing and speaking, because they need to know that they're doing the right thing. So I'll try to, to share with you as much as I can. Okay, let's work. Let's start with speaking. And I would like you to be active now because you're going to rate different statements. Please put one if this is not true or you don't believe in this, and put 10 if something is true, if you think that this is 100% true or you think this is really, really important, and something in between if it's not the maximum or the minimum mark. Thank you, Elena. So the first statement is speaking. How difficult is it? 1, very easy. 10, very difficult. We're talking about young learners, like children until 12. Ooh, 10, 8, 7, 5. 5. So I see that most people, they have 5 to 10. So you do consider it a difficult skill, but Svetlana Pazyuk think it's easy. That's cool. But when we talk about kids, mostly this is actually difficult. Easy 3. Thank you, Elena. Then maybe your kids are really cool with speaking, and so it's not easy. It's not difficult for them. Then it means that you teach them right. That's good. Next statement. How spontaneous is speaking? 1, not spontaneous at all. 10, very spontaneous. Thank you very much. 7, 5, 10, 9, 3. Wow, very difficult, very different marks. We'll discuss that. But usually when we talk about speaking, this is something spontaneous. We'll talk about it a little bit later. Next statement. Does it need any preparation? 1, 0 preparation, 10, a lot of preparation. So what will you say? Again, 3, 8, 7, 5, 10, 6, different marks. So this is something we can discuss later. It depends on 6. Thank you, Irina. That's interesting. One more statement for you. Is it a good idea to learn dialects and dialect pieces of text by heart? 1, bad idea. 10, excellent idea. 1, 5, 3. Wow. Yeah, you have very different idea about learning pieces of text by heart. We'll talk about it as well. All right, next statement. is learning by heart always a bad idea? 1, not always a bad idea. 10, not always. So 5, 10. Okay. Yeah, I agree that usually students do not want to learn by heart. Yes, it's difficult to actually make them. Yeah, we'll talk about this as well, because this is also controversial. One more. How natural is speaking in class during a lesson? We're talking about young learners. 1, very unnatural. 10, natural. 2, 7, 4, 3, 8. Wow. Again, another controversial statement. So this is also something we will discuss a little bit later. Thank you very much. And thank you for being honest and not trying to, to cover code it with something beautiful. Okay. 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 Just a moment. Yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah. All right. One more statement for you. Is it possible to make speaking natural? 1, very, very difficult. 10, sure, no problem. I see, again, very different responses. So for some teachers, it is easy to make it natural. For other teachers, it's difficult. No problem. Cool, Sarah. Great. So we will talk how to do it if you're not sure or if you would like to make it more natural in class. Okay, if personal 10. Yes, I totally agree with you, Victoria. All right, thank you very much. Now I have some ideas of what you would like to talk about more, and we can pay more attention to these things when we discuss speaking. The last statement to rate. Is it possible to make speaking practice natural and yet practice it so that it is always effective? Again, 1, impossible. 10, no problem. 9, 8, 5, 9. Thank you for your ratings. So I see that mostly you go well, but sometimes you need help with this and maybe you need ideas. Okay, let's get started then. Thank you very much for reacting to my questions. So now we're going to talk about how difficult speaking is. Well, actually, it is difficult. If it's not difficult, it means that you don't have any problems with this in class, and that is super cool. But technically, speaking is actually difficult. It's quite daring to start speaking in a different language, to start speaking in front of people, to start speaking when you're a little kid. So why is it difficult? I have some statements. If you disagree or strongly agree with something, you can also react to this in the chat. So yes, it is difficult because you have to react to what you hear adequately. So sometimes it is difficult, especially if you're limited in different language means. If you don't know enough vocabulary, enough language or something, if you cannot make a phrase. So yes, spontaneous reaction, it is not that easy. Then you have to say something almost immediately. When we talk about writing, we usually have some preparation time, unless this is a super cool exam like IELTS, when you have to immediately start writing and you don't even have time to make proper drafts. When you speak, you have to say something immediately. Otherwise, it sounds just weird. Okay, you have to come up with correct structure and adequate vocabulary in split second. And sometimes it's actually difficult. And that's why our students, despite the fact that they know a lot of synonyms, they keep saying some things like interesting and beautiful, even though they know other words, just because they're worried and just because they have to react to something very quickly. And you have to develop the skill in order to use, wider vocabulary, more interesting structures. And you have to teach your students how to do it. And very important thing, especially for Slavic people, you have to sound right in terms of pronunciation and intonation, because if you misuse them, people might not understand you, or they might consider that you are rude. And it is very important to actually teach kids correct pronunciation and correct intonation, because this is something that is very difficult to change when they continue learning further. And if it becomes a fossilized mistake, this is a very difficult thing to change. Okay, thank you very much for your reaction. Thank you, Camila. Thank you, Sarah. Okay, so one more thing that actually happens in class very often. It's something like, why should I ask my classmates about their favorite food? I don't care. So speaking, it has to be interesting. It has to be something students want to do, not something they will do reluctantly just because their teacher makes them do it. And it's actually possible to do it in class and to make them interested and to make them do what you want and practice their speaking the right way. And the teacher is listening. The classmates are listening. I don't want to make a mistake. This is another block that actually stops a lot of children from speaking. They prefer not to use complex vocabulary. They prefer not to experiment just because they're afraid to make a mistake. And my favorite, you can read it. So how is something and something in English? Sometimes we teach them phrases and things, but instead of using what we teach them, they start asking you, translating some phrases, the phrases that they will say once and they will forget those. And it's actually, you have to know how to organize the speaking so that they use the vocabulary and the grammar that you teach them, rather than translating for them what they want to say. Okay. So if you have something to add to why speaking is difficult, you're welcome. You can write something in the chat. I will look at it. And now we're going to look at how to teach speaking to make it really cool, interesting, and productive in your class. So first of all, the first piece of advice is it has to be in meaningful chunks that can be put together. There is a question from Anna. How do you respond to such questions if students ask to translate? Okay, Anna, I will tell you a little bit later. I will, what I usually do. I formulate the task the way that students do not have much choice, because I want them to use the language that we have been learning, that I've been teaching, and practice this and use this to, transfer the messages rather than translating some words that they will forget immediately. So I try to formulate the task so that they use the vocabulary that they have been learning. Of course, I can translate some words, but I don't want to become the translator for them, because instead of practicing their language, they just keep asking for the words that they will forget like 5 minutes later. So it depends on how you formulate the task. And a little bit later, I'm going to show you an example of the task that actually helps solve this problem. Maybe not 100%, but it gives a very good result in terms of students do not need your translation all the time. Okay, yes, so Google is okay, but if you teach 6-year-olds, Google will not work. It's also hard to anticipate what kind of vocabulary they might come up with. Yes, I totally agree with you, Tori, but you can always actually narrow their choices and make them use what you are teaching and what they're learning. The black box. I'm not sure which box you mean. Anna, can you please help? Because so Eugenia is asking, can you remove the chart a bit to the, so you can see that.
Let's do that right here.
Okay, now I understand. All right.
I will do that for you.
I didn't realize that you could see the chat.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you very much. So Tatiana is also giving us a very interesting tip. I tried to show them the meaning, explaining. Sometimes it looks funny, but they get it. Yes, that's cool. Yes, I have moved. Thank you very much, Eugenia. I didn't know that you could see the chat. All right, so let's talk about the chunks. When we use chunks instead of isolated words, this is what happens when you teach your students. I will give you an example from one of the course books that I was using once with kids. This is the chunk that can be just said very rhythmical, almost like a song. Listen to me. Why are you tired today? Why are you tired? And the response is, because I had a test today. That's why I'm really tired. I have a question to you. Why do you think I highlighted some of the words in this chant in blue? So what does it mean? Why are they highlighted? Yeah, Daria, this is a good idea. Past simple, yes. So this is probably what I'm learning with them. Maybe. Can be changed. Thank you, Tatiana. You are actually right. So I highlighted in blue the words that I can actually change. The black part stays the same. And this is something that I'm learning with my students. And I want them to remember this frame and fill it up with the words that they choose. And actually, this is a very cool chunk. And I really like it because it helps create the students' own chants. And here are the examples of the chants that they created. Look, why are you worried today? Why are you worried? Because I have a test today. That's why I'm really worried. So this is the same. Another example, why are you happy today? Why are you happy? Because I saw my friend today. That's why I'm really happy. And the last one, why are you scared today? Why are you scared? Because I saw a snake today. That's why I'm really scared. So it means that if you teach students the chunk and if you teach them which part of the chunk they can change, of course, you need to make sure that they use the right feeling, that they don't misuse the grammar tense or something. And if they practice chanting like this, they will not forget that black frame. And this is something that will help your students speak in phrases, not in isolated words. So this is the chant that actually asks them, helps them to remember a question, why are you today? About the feelings or something or looks. And because, and that's why. This is a very cool one. This is one of my favorites, and this is how I used it. And actually, my students created a lot of options with this, and they had no problems asking these questions and answering them. And you can actually come up with your own chunks, chants, chunks, whatever. But if you teach your students in chunks, and if you teach them which part of the chant or chunk they can change, they will speak using these chants, and they will do it automatically. So why are chants cool? Why are they a very important and wonderful means of teaching kids? And not only kids, by the way. So first of all, they help automatize spoken language. So which means that students don't think which word they need to say. They remember the chunk and they can change 1 or 2 words in this chunk and they express themselves. Then students don't need to translate every word because they know that if they want to ask their classmates why they feel like this, why they look like this, they automatically remember this question. Why are you tired today? Why are you angry today? Why are you sleepy today? I don't know, whatever. So they do not translate because they know how to say it in English. They do not think which word to use. And then it helps students use the language in similar context. So the chant also creates context because, of course, when you're chanting, you can use TPR. We can use different facial expressions when we remember the chant, when we repeat the chant. Why are you sad today? You can make a sad face. Why you're happy today, scared today. So you can actually use TPR to help students remember. It works really, really well. Also, the chants, they sound natural because this is example of natural English. This is not the English that students try to use by translating their own language and, you know, picking up English words in order to fill it up with their mother tongue frame. So that's why it is really, really cool. Yeah, a total physical response, TPR, there, you're right, Tatiana. With this chant, you can use different facial expressions. And this is a TPR. You can use gestures like, why are you tired today? Something like this. It works with these things as well. I used a lot of TPR when I teach kids. So I even use it where normal people don't use it because it works really well. And it helps me drill the phrases. Yeah, Oksana, thank you. I also like that you use TPR. That is very cool. Okay, if you have questions about chunks, you can write them in the chat and I will answer them. So this is my first tip. Use the chunks. And you can teach the chunks. And if students still need translation, the last tip, this is for this case, you can actually start slowly, but still regularly teaching them how to express themselves if they do not know the word, because they can describe things. For example, they can say something like, I don't remember the word, but you wear them in your hands in winter or on your hands, something like this. This is what a kid can say. And the word is, of course, mittens or gloves. How I started teaching my little kids doing this is I actually started with fruit. And this is the example that I usually provide when I do any teacher training, because it's very easy to start with. And this is something that I started with the kids who didn't know how to rephrase and how to describe the word instead of using it if they don't know it. And it worked really well with my kids. I started with fruit. Can you tell me which fruit is yellow outside, yellow inside, and it's oval? Can you write it in the chat? Banana, melon? Yeah, so it could be melon. No, it's not melon, it's lemon, because melon is white inside. Thank you very much. A little bit more difficult. This fruit, it is brown outside, yellow inside, and green on top. What is this? Brown outside, yellow inside, green on top. Yeah, this is a pineapple. Cool. Yeah, well, kiwi is green inside and brown outside. And yeah, pineapple, thank you. So this is something I started with when I was teaching my kids. So I taught them how to describe fruit using very, very simple phrases like it is. I started with colors and inside, outside. It is brown outside, it is green inside, it's a kiwi. I started with, then I used the shape. I used round shape, oval shape. I used the words like long when we talk about bananas. And then we started using tastes like sweet, it's sour. And they described fruit like this. And I even told them, if you remember, there is such thing as the crosswords that do not have the description. It's half a crossword. One person has one half of the words and the other person has the other half, and they have to give definitions to each other. So my kids could use half crosswords with fruit. They describe the fruit to each other. Of course, it was not that interesting because they could see what the fruit is, from letters, but still it was good practice. Okay, so this is something how you can start teaching your kids, giving definition instead of saying the word that they do not know. And it works really well. And it works with the smallest kids. Okay, so we talked about chunks, how to help students speak in real life. Because one thing is then when they speak in class, and the other thing is when they have to use the language in another situation. So what we can do, first of all, we have to practice in pairs. This is something that you have to teach your students to do. Again, it is difficult with small kids. If they do not do it at 6, at 7, that is perfectly fine. You can slowly, gradually teach them. But I would say that starting from the age of 8, 9, and 10, this is a must. You have to teach your students work in pairs simultaneously. So they practice something in pairs. What you do as a teacher while they're speaking in pairs all together, you have to walk around and monitor what they're saying. Help if needed. If they don't need any help, you can write down examples of the good language that they use or some errors that you would like to correct later. But your task is you monitor while they're speaking. How can we do that? Yes, so there is a question. Can I follow the same method in teaching adult beginners? Yes, of course. If it's not very childish, yes. You will not describe, yes, you can describe fruit and vegetables. Why not? They will learn the same words. You will not use TPR or something, but chants, they look very well. Different kinds of drills with beginners. Yeah, why not? Okay, how can you practice it best? First of all, you need to use a model. Your children will not start talking about the weather or about food if they don't know how to do it, if they have never seen, have never heard people talking about this. So there must be a model that they will hear, they will read, analyze if possible. So there must be a model that they can follow. Then you have to demonstrate what to say with the stronger learners. So if this is a conversation, talk to your partner, ask them how they feel, tell them how you feel. You have to demonstrate this with a stronger learner. Otherwise, students will not understand. So you have to demonstrate tasks a lot, sometimes many times, until your students get used to what you're doing and they understand that this is a demo. And they understand what to do and how they need to do it with their partners. And very, very important, this is something that not all the teachers do, but if you don't do this, your speaking will not work. You have to drill all the phrases that students will use, especially if they're kids, especially if they're beginning students. You have to drill them. Because if they haven't pronounced this, if they don't know how to say that right, if they haven't repeated it many times, they will either make a lot of mistakes or they will not be able to use the phrases correctly and confidently. So drilling is really, really important. Okay, there are a couple of questions. Yes, so there is a couple of suggestions from Sarah. Share a picture related to the topic, then let them talk about it. Yes, Sarah, you're absolutely right. This works well if your students are not beginners. When we talk about 6-7-year-old kids, they will not have enough language to talk about the picture. So sometimes when we talk about beginners, you have to provide them with almost all the language that they use. Let them drill it and let them practice. How do you make drilling activities interesting? Well, Denise, this is a very good question. I have a lot of, first of all, I use a lot of flashcards. And I use a lot of games with flashcards because when you use a flashcard, it is not necessarily one word that you repeat. You can repeat the word in context or in a phrase. And I play a lot of games. I also use a lot of TPR, so a lot of gestures, miming, and so on. And we play lots of games. We also play games in pairs. My students play games. I teach them. And they drill each other. For example, they play Pelmanism. You can Google it. They play memory games together. They know how to do it. They actually are teachers to each other because when I teach little kids, I provide them with little copies of flashcards. They're usually teeny tiny. And with the cards with the words, and we play a lot of games. For example, one of the students is the teacher and the other student is a student, and the teacher shows a flashcard. The student has to say the word or has to show the card with the word or something like this. So I play lots of games with them, so they think they're games, but actually this is pair work for drilling each other. So they become teachers to each other. And they repeat the same word many, many, many times. And they see the picture many times. They see the word on the card many times. And this is how they remember. I do the same things with phrases. So this is something, I think that this is the topic for another webinar. If you have more questions, of course, write them in the chat. Yeah, so a ball also works very well. So I use dice, I use everything, paper clips. So whatever you can use to make it more interesting to your students, do it, make them repeat things. Okay, so use a model, demonstrate, drill. And then this is one of the examples of a task. So a student has to ask their partner, what did you eat for breakfast? Again, this is the situation when your students can ask you to repeat different exotic words and ask you to translate exotic words. You can avoid doing this. First of all, you can ask them that they can say the words from the list that you have been learning. and they cannot say any other words. Or you can translate some word that your students often need and often use, and why not learn it in class? That's okay. If it's not something that just distracts the students, if it's a useful word, you can teach it to the students. Why not? What I do, so when I ask them to ask each other what they had for breakfast, so this is the kind of a conversation that I want to hear. What did you eat for breakfast? I had eggs, some toast, and a glass of milk. And my students always have a task. For example, write 10 different meals your classmates had for breakfast. So will my students roll their eyes? Well, some of them will, but mostly they don't, because now they have the reason talking to different classmates and asking them what they had for breakfast, because they have to write 10 different meals that they had. So it can be a competition if the kids can tolerate competitions. I do not recommend them if they don't. Make sure that they can tolerate that. And they will talk to each classmate, ask them the same question, because they need to write 10 different things. So how many times will they repeat the question, what did you eat for breakfast? At least 10 times if they have 10 classmates. How many times they will say, I had something, something, something? Again, 10 times, because they will talk to 10 classmates. So not just ask your partner a question, but there must be something they need to do, something they have to achieve. Okay. Next, another example, the same dialogue, but this time ask your classmates who had the same breakfast. So it depends on your students, your class, and so on. You can come up with different tasks to give them motivation to talk to different people and say and ask the same things. If they need to find a person who had the same breakfast, they will probably have to speak to most of the classmates, or they have to decide whose breakfast was the closest to what they had. Yes. Yeah, of course, there is a very good comment from Abdulrahman that the important thing is that they should speak to each other in English. Yes, so, but this is the matter of the class rules. If they have to speak in English, there must be the rule. And remember what we started with. They need to have a model. So here we have two phrases. What did you eat for breakfast? And I had something. This is something that you drill to them. This is something they have already learned. They can pronounce it. They know the words. And this is something that we want to practice. So there is no unknown language. There is a very clear rule what to do. You have to ask this question. You have to give a response. You have to find the person who had the same breakfast. One more option of such a thing, such a goal for students. What does this game look like to you? Can you write in the chat, please? Yeah, exactly, Tori. Tori is the most active person today. Yeah, thank you, Tatiana. This is a bingo. So you can actually turn this, let's say, routine speaking activity into a game. So they have to talk to different people. If a person responds, they can say only one type of food, and they play bingo. If they hear something, they cross it out. And when they have the line, they shout bingo. Exactly. So you can actually turn the routine speaking exercises into something really fun that the students will love. This is one of the ways to do that. Okay, if you have more ideas, you can also write in the chat and share with each other, because you have lots of ideas, so please feel free to express them. One more thing, how to help students speak in real life. They have to practice in pairs. We mentioned that. And there is one more activity that I usually use with my students, because this is the bridge from speaking to writing, because we're going to start talking about writing very soon. So the same task, they need to ask a question, what did you eat for breakfast? And the response is, I had something, something, something. But this time, look, it's Vanya's breakfast, Sasha's breakfast, teacher's breakfast. So they have to talk to all the people, and they have to make notes about their breakfast. Why I want this? Because later I want them to speak about their partners if it's applicable, because in some course books, this is disaster. The question is, do you like all the lesson? But at the end, the book says, talk about your partner. And I understand that we didn't practice he, she likes, and I cannot use this activity. So you have to be careful with the course books. So if it's applicable, I can ask them to tell about their partner's breakfast. And I can also turn it into a game. When they have talked to each other, to everyone, when they have made the notes about each other's breakfast, I can say, okay, now you read, tell us about someone's breakfast, and we have to listen and guess the person. Isn't it a good idea? So they don't just say, now I will talk about Vanya's breakfast. No, they will say, this boy or this girl or this person, depends on how you teach them, had eggs, a glass of milk, and some toast for breakfast. And the other class, they have to look at their notes and they have to say who that person is. Yeah, thank you, Victoria. I demonstrate it in class, and then I put them in pairs, and they actually work together simultaneously, and they play this guessing game. This is something I usually and very often do with my students. So this speaking will then turn into writing, because later they will have to write about someone's breakfast or their class breakfast. We can turn it into a survey, whatever. So there are millions of options, but this is a very good bridge from speaking to writing. This is what I usually do with my students, with my kids. And this is something that always works. And that's why I wanted to share this with you. So please feel free to use this. This is very simple, and that's why it works. So I hope that you might find it useful in your class. Okay. And remember, I told you that my students always do something, not just ask and answer questions. And here are the 4 options that I showed you. So the first was write 10 different meals that your classmates had, who had the same breakfast, Vanya, Sasha's teacher's breakfast, and the bingo. What do we call these in one word or one phrase? Can you please write this in the chat? What kind of tasks are they? There is one term for this. Exactly. Thank you, Daria. This is communicative purpose. This is why I need to talk to that person and why I need to tell them what I eat and why I have to ask them. Not because my teacher told me, not because it's interesting. It's not interesting, because most of the things that we learn, they're not that interesting. We don't want to know about people that much, especially kids. They're really self-centered. When they're 6, they don't care about what their classmates eat. They care about what they eat, their toys and their parents and so on. But if we have a communicative purpose and if we can win a game, so this is something that helps them practice the same things and repeat the same things again and again and again. And this is something that makes it a real life situation, because when we talk to people, we have a good reason to do that. We do not speak for the sake of speaking, like in the English class that has no purpose. So in our class, we always create an artificial need for speaking. And this is the communicative purpose. This is how we can make sure that our students will actually say and practice what we taught them. Right. Yeah. So the role play, by the way, this is a good idea. But a role play also has a purpose. So why should I ask this person how much something costs? Like we play the role game in the shop. He is a shop assistant. I'm a person who I'm a shopper. Why would I ask them how much something is? When I'm in the real shop, yes, this makes sense. When we're in class, it doesn't make a lot of sense. But if I have 3 shop assistants and 3 different shops and they are rivals, and I need to buy the cheapest set of food. So I will ask all the people and I will buy the products that are the cheapest. So then it makes sense in class. So you have to give students, you have to provide them with a communicative purpose. In that case, they will speak. Thank you very much, Natalia. Okay, one more thing that is very important, and that I always talk about. What do you think this is? Any ideas? What does that picture stand for? Please write in the chat. Fun. Mocking, exactly. Students very often they don't want to speak because they don't want their classmates to mock them. So this is bullying, mocking. Yeah, Tatiana, this is connected to making mistakes. So what you have to make sure is you have to create the atmosphere where making a mistake is not a crime. And no one is going to laugh at you. No one is going to correct you rudely. No one is going to hurt your feelings. And making mistakes is normal. Don't get me wrong. This is not okay to make mistakes in the target language. That's why you drill your students to death. They have to say it right. But when they experiment with the language, when they try to use the phrase that you're to use some phrases that they're not sure of, let them speak. Make sure that no one mocks at them, and it's okay to make a mistake. So encourage support, and it has to be a universal rule in your class that making a mistake is not terrible. This is okay. And this is not a laughing matter. So if you have positive atmosphere in your class, the atmosphere of respect, your students will speak more eagerly and they will not close up. This is the obvious thing, but still, this is very important. So, and this is the teacher's role, first of all, to have the positive atmosphere that will provide the students with the opportunity to express themselves. And of course, there is a good comment about supporting the weaker learners. If you have the class where they tolerate each other, tolerate slower students, you will not have that many problems. You will not have that rolled eyes or something and mockery. Please work on that. It will enable you to teach everyone, and everyone will benefit from the situation. Okay, we have time to talk about writing. And this time, I'm not going to ask you to rate all the statements one by one. Can you please choose one statement that you would really, really, really like to talk about? Put the number in the chat and rate it from 1 to 10. Yeah, Victoria, you have to give smiles. Yeah, I agree with you that stickers are very important. I would say that, on the other hand, they have to be well-deserved. So my students, to get the sticker, they have to work hard. Yeah, and can you please, yes, you would like to talk about those statements. Can you please rate them? Put from 1 to 10. Okay. Everyone wants to talk about number 3. What can 6-year-old write? What 6-year-olds write? They can write, yes. 7. How can I give them good marks? Okay, good. 5. They speak good, but when they try to write, this is always word-by-word translation. 6. Writing is always homework. Okay, so most of them. Thank you very much for contributing to the chat. Yeah, 3 is the winner. Thank you very much. Yeah, this is my favorite question because lots of teachers believe that they cannot write at all. Well, they can. We're not talking about literacy skill when they're learning to write letters and words. We're talking about a production, and it's possible. Okay, let's talk together. So why cannot students write? So first of all, we will start with why they cannot write. They don't know how. Usually they don't know the structure or what grammar or vocabulary to use. So what you have to do, you have to teach them. They don't know what to write about. This is another problem, lack of ideas. And why bother at all? Who's going to read it apart from the teacher? This is very demotivating, but there are remedies for this thing. We will talk about it. So what can they write? Here are 4 ideas, and there are many, many more ideas. If you like the ideas, if you think a 6-year-old can write this, put a plus in the chat, please. Thank you very much. Yes. So the very first one, this is the shopping list. And they can be different. There can be a shopping list for a barbecue, a shopping list for the week, a shopping list for a party, and they are different shopping lists. A vegetarian shopping list, a winter shopping list, a sweet tooth shopping list, lots of them. They can write a menu for a restaurant or a menu for, I don't know, for a summer camp. They can write their school timetable, their own timetable, the timetable of their dream, the timetable for a unicorn, for a hobbit, for whatever, whomever, lots of other things. And they can write, they can create a house, their own house, and they can write down the names, a dream house, whatever. So, and these are writings. They're very primitive, very simple, but still it can be the writing. And this is the writing if it has a reader. This is very important. Remember, when we talk about productive skills, this is always communication and exchange. So how to teach writing? Very briefly. First of all, you have to teach the necessary grammar and vocabulary. If your students write a postcard about their holiday, so they need to know present continuous. We're swimming, the weather is fine, we're walking every day, something like this. If they write a little story, they have to know how to use past simple. So grammar is important. And when they describe a house, they have to know how to use the is, the ra. Move from speaking to writing. I have already told you how I do it with my kids. There are different ways, but this is the natural thing. First of all, they have very good speaking practice, and then they can put it into writing, especially if they use the same structures in writing. So what did you eat for breakfast? I had eggs, some toast, and a glass of milk. They can write about their breakfast. They can write about their classmates' breakfast, especially when they start with mine, Sasha, teacher, and so on. And use a model text to teach the structure and other features. This is very important because when we talk about teaching kids, they always need a model. If they don't have a model, they don't know what to write and how to write. So they need to have an example that they analyze and they keep it, they can use it, they can copy something from this example. They know how to do it because they see it in a model. Help with ideas. Sometimes students don't understand what to write about. Help with the ideas. There are different ways. Brainstorming, you can provide the ideas on the board, whatever, but help your students. Sometimes they don't write because they don't know what to write about. And think about the reader. And provide feedback in the same lesson. So let's talk about the reader first, and then we'll talk about the feedback. We have 1 minute, I hope we can cover. So these are examples of writing from my 11-year-old kids. Here is what task they had. You are a travel agent who organizes different tours. Write a post for your website about an exotic sports that you would like to sell to the tourists. Make it attractive so that the tourists wanted to buy it. Do they have a good reason to write and to make this description interesting? If you think so, put a plus, please. Thank you. So yes, they have a reason to write about an exotic sport. So my task is not write about an exotic sport. My task is you have to sell the sport to the tourists. And then after this, they need to read each other's descriptions, and they need to read and decide which one would they like to try and why. So in that case, we have a writer who is thinking about the reader, and we have a reader who gives feedback on the writing. So they would all like to make it attractive and interesting for each other because they want to be selected. What I do with my students, but again, it doesn't work in all groups. Please be very careful with this. It has to be a very friendly and a very cool group. When they write stories, I ask them to make their classmates characters. In that case, they're usually very eager and they want to write stories. It doesn't always work. Please be very careful with this. This is what I do. This is another task that my students wrote. It was a burger recipe. Again, students created different burgers with different fillings, and then they read each other's recipe and they decided which burger they would like to buy. Again, why not? So that was a good reason to write, and that was a good reason to read. Please do it. It works well. And the last idea from me, make it fun. These are different kinds of kids. On the left, these are the kids that I was teaching them 2 years ago, and they were actually very reluctant to speak. But they spoke. There was a guessing game. They are carrying textbooks in their hands. So they describe characters and their partners. They need to listen and guess. They were doing this just because I allowed them to sit on the window. So maybe you need to allow them to do something that would actually help them enjoy the writing or reading more or speaking more or whatever. So on the left, they speak. On the right, my older kids, they are pre-teenagers. They were 12. They are doing some writing. They wanted to do it on the floor. I allowed them. They produced. I'm very happy. Why not? You can do it on the floor. I don't mind. Just write. And so very last idea about marking. So first of all, if the writing looks like this, it is always demotivating. It's like pointing to your mistakes, no appreciation. What you can do is please do not correct every mistake. If your focus in your module, whatever, is past simple, correct past simple. Do not correct something that is not essential for this level of students, or this is something that is not necessary right now. Otherwise, everything is red and it's very demotivating. Encourage self and peer check. Teach your students to use checklists, and they can actually correct and check themselves. Praise for anything that was good. It is very important to tell them what they did right, what was good. I even use color markers to highlight the sentences that I really, really liked. And I sometimes leave friendly comments. And remember, we do not correct mistakes only in order to put a mark. We want it to help our students develop and make it better the next time. So it is very difficult, I know. Ideally, all the writing has to be done in class, and you have to provide students with feedback in class. Of course, you will have a chance to read all the works in detail and comment on that when you collect them. But while students are writing, you have a chance to collect a couple of sentences with typical mistakes and some good language, put them on the board and ask students to improve, correct the mistakes. This is how you provide students with feedback on their writing during the lesson. And of course, remember that every writing needs a reader. Okay, I think we're time pressed already, and I have to finish. So if you have questions, please feel free to ask them in the Telegram chat. I'll be very happy to answer. I hope that you had some ideas that were useful and you can use with your kids. I tried to keep it simple, but yet I chose everything that works really, really well with my kids. And remember, the most important thing, this is the atmosphere in class. Keep it friendly.